Hi everyone, my name is Jenny and welcome back to my creative space. Today's video is something very special to me. As you can tell by the title, I am rereading one of my favorite books, Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. It's been about a year since I've finished the entire of the Realm of the Elderlings, and I've wanted to get back into this world and really do a deep read and analyzation of the story. And I thought it would be fitting for me to start my reread and make a little video project about it, since about a year ago is when I actually started this channel, and the first video that I did was an Assassin's Fate spoiler vlog video, which very strange choice for my very first video since it's quite niche. Has read all 16 books and wants to be spoiled, and that being my first vlog was a choice, but it was a choice that I made, and it's led me here to making videos for a year now, and I wanted to pay a slight homage to that by doing a reread of Assassin's Fate and doing a spoiler-filled video. And if you don't know what Assassin's Fate is about, the Kingdom of the Six Duchies is on the brink of civil war when news breaks that the Crown Prince has fathered a bastard son and is shamed into abdication. The child's name is Fitz, and he's despised. Raised in the castle stables, only the company of the king's fool, the ragged children of the lower city, and his unusual affinity with animals provide Fitz with any comfort. To be useful to the crown, Fitz is trained as an assassin and to use the traditional magic of the Farseer family, but his tutor, allied to another political faction, is determined to discredit, even kill him. Fitz must survive, for he may be destined to save the kingdom. I will say that I've already read chapter 1 and the annotations are quite intense. It is so nice to be back in Robin Hobb's very lush and descriptive writing and getting to be able to have the foresight of the entire series behind this book and getting to see how she's like setting up the world is something that I really am looking forward to. But with that, this is the start of my reread spoiler vlog for Assassin's Apprentice. I really hope you enjoy this video project that I have, and I hope you stay for the ride and potentially cry with me as we see poor baby Fitz suffer through what the royal family has in store for him. I'm doing my first check-in for Assassin's Apprentice. I've read 3 chapters, so I'm about like 15-ish% into the book, and I thought it would be a good time to do a beginning check-in. I think what I'm going to do is do a brief overview of what's happened in the first 3 chapters, and then I'm going to talk in depth about a few quotes and moments that I think are important to the read. So in the first 3 chapters, we are introduced to Fitz as he's chronicling the history of the 6 duchies, and he kind of lets us know that every single time he puts pen to paper, he ends up writing about his life story, and we are then jumped into him at the age of 6 as his first memory in the 6 duchies, where he's being abandoned by his maternal grandfather, and it is revealed that he is the bastard son to the king-in-waiting Prince Chivalry. And because of the news of his existence, it creates a lot of discord in the court, and it forces his father, Prince Chivalry, to abdicate his position in the line to the throne, and that kind of moves up his younger brothers in the line of succession, and his youngest brother, Prince Regal, is the one who kind of voices his opinion in saying that they need to decide what to do with Fitz, because having him alive is like having a blade to the king's throat. And then within the next 2 chapters, we see Fitz as he's trying to navigate his way through Buckkeep Castle as a young 6-year-old boy, and he's developing this kind of tenuous relationship with his father's best friend, Burrich, who is the stable master of Buckkeep, and Burrich is assigned to taking care of Prince Chivalry's bastard, as if he can take care of Prince Chivalry's beast and hounds, he can go ahead and take care of his bastard child. And we kind of see Fitz struggle with his position at Buckkeep Castle because he's so looked down upon, people are kind of forcing shame upon him for the mistake that his father has made. He finds a lot of solace in hanging out with these young kids of the town and also this puppy that he has bonded so closely to, until one day Burrich finds him thieving in the town, and he kind of reprimands him, tells him that that is below his station as the bastard to the prince of the kingdom. Burrich finds a lot of suspicion with his connection with this dog named Nosy, and he ends up finding out that Fitz has the ability of the Old Wit, which is this very reviled ability to have mind connection with animals. And that's where chapter 2 leads off. And chapter 3, we kind of see as Fitz is around the age of 9 or 10, and he's just trying to find his position in the court. So that is the basic overview. If you don't want to be further spoiled, I think this is a good time for you to hop on out of the video, because I will be talking a little bit more in detail about that overview. But I hope that if you're pausing here, you're going to go pick up this book. I will say that if you like something a lot more character focused, almost in the lens of like a literary fiction fantasy, I think Realm of the Elderlings is something that could really catch your eye. It is a much more slow paced of a book, and it has very like slice of life mundane moments, but there's a lot of emotional hard-hitting points in this book, and I think that's where I lean into on the ends of like a literary fiction, where I feel like it really pulls emotion out of the story. So if that's something that you think you would like, I highly suggest that you do. And I also think that the audio narration for the first trilogy is done very well. So let's talk about the quote that I want to call out in the first chapter. I mean, in the very beginning, Fitz lets us know that the history of his life is very deeply seated with loss and loneliness. And so I think that Robin Hobb very much is like, this is the story you're gonna get. There's probably not a high chance of there being much joy. I don't remember the first time I had read this book, chapter 2 being that devastating right off the bat. And I'm like, is it devastating because I know Fitz and I've had such a deep connection with him as a character? But no, like I am seeing people who are reading this book for the first time and being like, oh no. And if you don't know what happens, Nosy, that dog that Fitz becomes bonded to, he is bonded not just through like friendship, but also like through a mind connection because of his ability of having the wit. Burrich finds out and is completely disgusted in Fitz, and he's like blaming Fitz for having this very perversive connection with the dog, because it's just alluded to that this society looks really down upon people who have the wit, and they see them almost less human because of it. And he even talks to Fitz like, I've heard that like people who have the wit aren't really children. They grow too quickly because of this strange connection they have with beasts. The fact that you find it perversive is kind of more of a you problem than it is with this child, because you, with your like societal norms you are upholding, are the one that believes it's wrong, and he just is like, it's a very natural thing, like no one's ever taught me that it was wrong. And Burrich gets angry at him like, you're not speaking like a child, and maybe you've never been one because of this perversive connection you have with dogs. And so because of that, Burrich offs Nosy. Like, he grabs Nosy and disconnects them, and he tells Fitz, like, this is the only way to get rid of this perversion in you is by severing this bond, and the only way to sever the bond is to off Nosy. And I'm like, and it's so sad, this moment, because he's only 6. And he tells us that he felt the disconnection between him and Nosy, and it felt as if Burrich had taken away a limb from him, and he felt this like devastating loneliness. And the end of that chapter, It's like, yes, obviously the animal death is very sad, but I think the saddest part in stories is when we get to sit in the character's perspective and see them processing loss. And because he's only 6, I think it amplifies how sad this loss is for him. The very end paragraph of chapter 2 is, afterward, Birch took pains to see that I was given no chance to bond with any beasts. I know he meant well, but I do not feel protected by him, but confined. He was the warden that ensured my isolation. Utter loneliness was planted in me then, and it sent its deep roots down into me. He's only 6. He's only 6. And just the way this chapter was like paced, he kind of slowly but surely starts to trust Burrich. And then in that moment, Burrich so quickly rips that trust away. And it almost shifts the relationship in a way where, like, Burrich, you are a provider, but then at the same time, you can never be a safe space for me again. And the idea of a child having to go through that emotional and psychological distress. Robin Hobb, what are you doing? And then in chapter 3 is where Fitz is really like being settled into Buckkeep Castle. At this point, he's like 9 or 10, and he catches the eye of his grandfather, the king, and the king is having like this conversation with Regal where he's like, what are you going to make of him? Are you going to make Fitz your enemy? Is he going to be somebody that threatens your position in the throne? Or are you going to use him as a weapon? And so his grandfather ends up calling Fitz over and giving him the insignia of the buck. And he tells Fitz, like, you are my man now. And if you have any issue, you call me and I will solve your problems. And in turn, you will be loyal to me and me only. And he's like, oh, okay. And he has no idea that that has really changed the entire course of his life, this interaction with his grandfather. And so his grandfather then decides, like, since he is of this age that he can be molded into what he needs as a king, he then charges Burrich to, like, he's not going to stay with you anymore in the stables. He's going to have his own place in the castle, and he's going to be educated by, like, the best teachers and whatnot in the castle. And Burrich has to kind of break it to him that, like, you're not going to be with me anymore. You're going to be up in the castle where you belong. And Fitz is like, I would rather be a stray puppy. You wouldn't let them do this to a stray pup, changing everything all at once. And it's so sad because he kind of states, like, despite it being very oppressive being with Burrich, who's been watching over him so that he doesn't bond with any new beast or anything, he would rather have that oppression than be alone in some place unknown to him. And I'm like, Robin, I don't have anything to say to you, but just, oh my god. Yeah, that's where we really end off on the 3 chapters. He's trying to get himself comfortable in the position that he's in and understand where he is in society as the royal bastard. Despite this being the second time I'm reading this book, I am still very enthralled. Like, Robin really has me hooked, and I'm like, yes, I'm analyzing this on a deeper level, and I'm highlighting and I'm marking things that I think are very important to the story overall. And I'm, like, looking at the little seeds that she's planted that then take effect at a greater level in the next coming trilogies. I am still, like, very present within this book, and I'm not thinking too forward on what I know is already going to happen. And I think that just really solidifies Robin's skill as an author. Like, she really can have you very invested and involved in a character, despite him being very young, despite there not being that much going on currently within text. There is something so very gripping and very moving about her words and how she's kind of pacing out these reveals of who Fitz is and who he is to other people within the court. And so I am just having such a splendid time, even though she's hurting me so badly. But that is my check-in for now. I think I'm gonna read up to maybe 30 to 50% and then do another check-in. Hello, I do believe I owe you an update. I think the last time I filmed, which was a while ago, was the end of chapter 3, but I am now at the end of chapter 8, so I think that's about like 35 to 40-ish% into the book, and quite a few things have happened. So from the last update, Fitz, I believe, is being offered a room in the keep, and so now he's getting into his like daily tasks. He's starting to be educated by the swords master, also being able to read and write and all that. And then also he's being introduced to the very nefarious job of being an assassin. So he has met Chade, who's going to be his instructor in the art of assassination. So he is being offered this opportunity, and Chade himself isn't like, oh, you have to be an assassin, but this is something that the king wants of you. And so he kind of agrees to be an apprentice to Chade and learn like roots and like the quiet ways of taking care of issues that the king faces. And then in the 5th chapter, he is being given little missions and tests by Chade to see like how stealthy he is and like how much he can remember and details he can take in, because not only is his job as the assassin's apprentice to be able to take somebody out and take care of an issue quietly, but he's also somebody who has to be able to take in information and give a very detailed account of what he has experienced. And so since he is quite young, I think at this point he's around like 10 or 11, Chade is giving him all of these opportunities to show him like how much he has learned and what he needs to be better at. And so at one point Chade is like, I think that you have done quite enough. The next thing that I want you to do is steal something from the king's room and not let the king know. And to Fitz, he had promised his loyalty to the king, hence why he ended up deciding to say yes on becoming the royal assassin. And this goes against everything that Fitz feels like he had promised the king. Like, I promised my loyalty, and that means that I cannot go behind the king's back, even if you tell me as my mentor to do something. And so he really fights against literally stealing whatever from the king's room. Like, he could have taken anything, I think. It wasn't anything specific, but Fitz feels so like it feels so against his nature to do that as somebody who has like called himself the king's man. And so he goes against Chade to kind of the detriment of their relationship, because Chade kind of acts out and he gets very angry and he tells Fitz to leave his room and don't come back and see him again. Like, he's never going to call on him again, because if he can't fulfill something this simple, then that shows like he's not meant for this job. And this poor child, he is like very confused, because he's like, I promised my loyalty to the king, and you are asking me to do something that goes against that loyalty. And when he's getting kicked out, he's like in a daze, and he's thinking like, oh my god, did I make the wrong choice? And not because I'm going against my loyalty to the king, but did I make the wrong choice because I'm losing this relationship that I have with Chade? And Fitz ends up actually becoming physically sick. Like, he is just so badly sick. He ends up having like a fever and all sorts of things. He's not eating, he's not sleeping properly. And it comes to the point that Burrage is like, there's something wrong with you and you're too young for this to be women problems. So like, what's going on? And Fitz is like, he promised this vow of secrecy to not tell anybody about Jade, because Jade is the current royal assassin. And so he's like, I can't tell you, but I just feel very alone. And Birch is like, I don't get it. Like, I'm here. We work at the stables every single day. Like, what's going on? And Birch decides to like really work him to the bone at the stables to get his mind off of it. And there's a point where Birch is like, one day you will wake up and realize that what you thought was killing you on the inside isn't killing you anymore, and you grew up and you got over it. But like, it's so sad because Birch just doesn't understand the emotional turmoil he is going through at this moment, because he feels like this one person who he had in the castle is no longer with him, and Birch has already kind of like damaged their relationship with the way he handled Fitz and finding out that he had the wit. And so like now this other grown person has like kind of damaged this relationship by like isolating Fitz this way. And it ends up where Chade finds out, like, you know, he's so emotionally distraught by it, and he's like, I'm so sorry, like, I'm not the one who asked you to steal from the king. It was the king himself who put me up to this. And, you know, we didn't know that it was going to put you through this much turmoil. And he just like breaks down. And it comes to the point where the king actually calls Fitz to his rooms, and they have like breakfast together, and the king kind of clears the air, and like in front of the king's face, Fitz takes a knife from his like table, and he slips it up his sleeve and takes it to Chade, like while the king is obviously seeing him. And it's like a very clear sense of defiance and like his way of showing his anger. Like, just the thought of these grown-ass men putting a young child like this through so much emotional turmoil just to test his loyalty. I understand why they're doing that, because, you know, it's so vital to have people who are 100% loyal to you as the king of this country. But I don't know. I think that there are healthier ways to create bond and loyalty in a young child than to emotionally torture them. But that's me, you know, I'm not the king of the six duchies, so what would I know, right? What would I know? And then, like, the next chapter, we are kind of following Fitz again as he's, again, readjusting to his life in the keep. Again, he's kind of had this very damaged relationship with Chade, but he's still kind of clinging on to the relationship that they have, because like he is the one person who he feels understands him the most. And one of his teachers has noticed like he has really good skill in writing, and he's like, oh, maybe you should become my apprentice as a scribe. And Fitz is like, oh, I never even thought that I had any other choice in my life to be something else. And he kind of brings that up to Chade, and Chade's like, your bloodline holds you hostage. You cannot just waltz out of here and become a scribe and think that your life is going to be sunshines and rainbow. You will always have a target on your back. And if not a target on your back, you will always be a target to the king. So you're trapped here. And Fitz is like, oh my god, that means I can never leave here. Like, I am always tied to this place. And Chade is like, well, it's your mentality that creates the prison. Like, you can either see this as something that is beneficial to you, or you can see it as a prison, and that's your choice. And I'm like, this poor, like, I don't know, at this point, 12-year-old boy is just really going through it. And the adults around him aren't really, I guess, setting him up to that. And like, clearly these are adults that have not been around kids for like 40 years. So, you know, what would they know about handling the emotional turmoil of a child? And at the end of that chapter, we also find out that Fitz's father, Prince Chivalry, actually is dead. like his uncle accidentally delivers the news because they run into each other coming back to Buckkeep Castle, and he's like, oh my god, like you scared me because you literally look like the spitting image of chivalry, and we have just found out that chivalry died. And then he later, Prince Verity later is like, oh, I apologize that it kind of like slipped out like that. Like, I'm just in shock because I can't believe that he's gone. Like, it doesn't seem real. And so Fitz in chapter 7 is kind of processing the death of his father, and also Burrich like shaves his head in mourning, and he kind of questions the idea of like, why do I have to mourn a man who's never been there for me and matter of fact completely abandoned me, and I'm not even sure I've ever met in my life. So like, what is the importance of this? And he can't ask Burrich because he feels Burrich is a little too close and a little too sensitive for that kind of questioning. So he brings it to Chade, and Chade's like, how do you know that that man has never loved you? Like, have you ever thought that maybe your father pushed you away in order to keep you safe and allow you to not become a political target? And Fitz is like, be fucking serious. Do you see the bullshit I am experiencing in the castle right now? And like obviously he's like angry and upset about it because he's only like a 12-13-year-old boy, so he doesn't understand the complexities of not only being a father but also being the king in waiting. Like, there are so many different expectations that are put onto you, and also the people in your life that you love. Although I kind of understand the reasoning Chade is giving to Fitz at this point in time, it also feels like you're dismissing this young child's emotional needs and his perspective on like, yeah, why should I care for a man that I've never met and known? And like, because of his choices, I get the short end of the stick and I'm treated as less than because of his mistakes. At another end, he's like, I find it very suspicious that my father died so suddenly, and then the current story is that Prince Chivalry fell off a horse and that was how he died. And so Fitz is like, I think there is a deeper political story going on that isn't being told. And Chade is like, you know, good keen eye, but I also think this is a warning for you to like keep it quiet and keep it cute. Like, don't bring attention to yourself because clearly there's somebody targeting your father, and that somebody probably wouldn't hesitate to come and get you. And Chade's like, you know, although I have like my inner intel in the castle, I don't know who put out this supposed hit. Like, it could just be an accident, like it's reported, or it could be something deeply sinister. But this is something that, you know, keep your eye out on and just keep quiet. And Fitz is very deeply concerned that the person who put out the hit on his father is actually the current queen. And the current queen is Regal's mother. Regal has a different mother from Chivalry and Verity. So he thinks that his life could potentially be in danger because this woman clearly wants Prince Regal to be the king, and she's kind of setting it up as any means necessary kind of thing. And towards the end of that chapter, Fitz is trying to just clear his mind and figure out, you know, who he wants to be as he's coming towards his teenage years. And this is when we finally get to see a scene between our good old besties, Fitz and the Fool. So Fitz is taking kind of like the long route back to Buckkeep Castle, and he's like walking through the forest, and he runs into the Fool, and he's like, oh my god, I thought this person wasn't able to be outside in the sun. Like, he thought that the Fool had some sort of like sun affliction, and Fitz is thinking like, what the hell are they doing out here? And then the Fool is like, I got this message for you. And he says some sort of riddle that is like indicative of like Fitz fixes Vice's fits that suffices, something like that. And so Fitz is already shocked that he's seeing him out and about. He's like, what the hell are you saying to me? Like, could you explain that a little bit further? And then the fool's like, you're an idiot. I don't understand dream interpretation. I'm just delivering the message to you. So let it be known. And he repeats the riddle again. And he's like, good day to you. And he leaves. And Fitz is like, what the hell? I'm confused. And it's funny because his inner monologue is like, how do you politely tell somebody you just met that the entire time that you've like seen them out and about, you've thought they were a moron? And then the fool also like verbally calls Fitz an idiot. And I'm like, what a beautiful way to have a first conversation, right? Like this introduction of the two being that silly and ridiculous was something that I did not remember. So it was quite a delightful thing to see. And then at the end of that chapter, Fitz is given his very first assignment to potentially assassinate the ruler of a coastal town because that area has been getting consistently raided, and they're wondering if the leader of that town is either working with the enemy or he's just being sloppy at his job. Very sad for my bestie Fitz, but unfortunately that was something that I knew was coming along. So, am I surprised? Not at all. Am I hurt? A lot, yes. But being able to really like get into it and like annotate and like just have contemplations about this series as a whole is so nice. And you know, Robin's character work has kept up, as I've said in my first check-in, and I'm just really enjoying the way her writing is being laid out despite the plot not being too heavy. But from my memory, a lot more is happening than I thought in book one. Because I think my first time reading around this, I was like, ugh, nothing's really happening and it's like slow and boring. But I'm like, actually, on a second read, I feel like there's a lot of little interpersonal things that are happening that is progressing the story forward quite quickly. I think it's just more so the fact that it's not action forward, like there's no physical aggression going on, there's no like fights or battles. It's all more so like an interpersonal growth within Fitz. And I do find that very interesting as someone who is a more character focused reader. And I'm really enjoying the way Robin is building these newer relationships that Fitz is developing. And I just can't wait to see how Fitz kind of settles into his new position as an assassin and, you know, the potential of him making new friends and comrades as he continues becoming more involved within Buckkeep Castle. Okay, so I'm here to do another check-in. I am about 60% into the book now, and I thought this would be a good time to give you a rundown on what has gone on. I believe I last left you at the end of chapter 8, so the beginning of chapter 9, and quite a few things have happened thus far, so let's get into it. In chapter 9, we basically are seeing Fitz as he is going to this coastal town where they're having a lot of raids, and he basically enacts the prophecy that the fool had given him about the fats fixes vices and fat suffices. So the lady of this coastal town, her dog is like choking or whatever, and so he like uses butter to like help take out the bird bone that is choking the dog. And because of that act of kindness, he earns the respect of the lady of the town, and she's incredibly young, and he realizes like this woman has no political ally, and the reason why the coastal town is being raided and the leader of this town isn't doing his due diligence is because he is so distracted by his young wife. And so he tells her like, oh, I had this vision that you in a dream had decided like to cast aside your riches so that your husband could give all this money to the town in protecting the town, and you were praised and revered by all the people. And because of him saving this dog, he gives himself an avenue to build up this political relationship between him and this coastal duchy. And also he kind of creates a pathway where he doesn't have to assassinate the leader of this coastal town. It is revealed to us that Chade is disguised as Lady Time, who is this woman that in his mission Fitz has to escort from the Buckkeep Castle to this coastal town so that she can meet her relatives. And so he's like, okay, you need to get on a horse because we've gotten news that the Red Ship Raiders have raided a neighboring town, so you and I have to go investigate. And there's this really strange threat given by the Red Ship Raiders where they say, like, we've kidnapped the people of this town, and if you pay us gold, we'll kill them for you. And if you don't pay us gold, we'll release them. And so Chade is like, what a strange bargaining chip that they've given us, because either way we kind of win. Like, why would we pay these people to kill our people? Like, if we don't pay, then we get our people back and all is good. And so Chade is like, we need to investigate this for the king and for Prince Verity because there's something that doesn't sit right with him. And when they end up going to the town of Forge, the people there are acting very strange, and Fitz himself describes it as if they were soulless, and he's like, he doesn't feel any life coming from them. And it's like to the point where he didn't even notice the people in the town until Chade pointed it out. And so Fitz has this very uneasy feeling, and he like takes Chade out of the town, and he's like, there's something wrong with those people. They're not normal people. Like, there's something missing in them. And Chade kind of is signaled off by Fitz saying that he has the skill, which is a power that is like well known to run in the royal bloodline. And so Chade is like, this is a perfect opportunity with all of this political upheaval in our kingdom, that I am persistent that the king train you in the skill. And so Fitz is kind of enrolled into this coterie of students that are going to end up learning the skill and potentially serving the king. So as Fitz is kind of getting ready to switch over from learning the skills of an assassin from Chade and learning the skill from the skill master Galen, he actually bumps into his father's wife, Patience, and their first interaction is like very filled with strife, and like he has no idea who she is, but she clearly knows who he is because, as people have said in The Keep, he looks so much like Chivalry, there's no way that she wouldn't know who he was. And so because of her moving back to the castle, she is very insistent that her and Fitz form a relationship, and the Fool kind of reveals to Fitz that when Prince Chivalry abdicated the throne and they first moved out to Withy Woods, Patience is quite upset about the knowledge of Fitz being the bastard son to her husband. But then within a few months, she decides, like, we need to take him in, we need to take care of him and raise him as if he were our child. But Prince Chivalry refuses, and it kind of calls back to the conversation that Fitz has with Chade, where Chade is like, you don't really understand what your father is sacrificing to keep you safe. And it's shocking to Fitz that he realizes, like, this woman who was very much slighted by his existence is willing to take him in and care for him. And they form a very tenuous relationship where she is teaching him the skills of a respectable young man in the royal line and of noble birth, and also like trying to win his favor over to her, because really in Buckkeep Castle she really has no one besides her handmaiden. And so Fitz is like kind of reluctant in learning like skills of like writing poetry, playing music, dancing, and all of the things she thinks is respectable for a young prince to know. And in order to win him a little bit, she gives him a puppy. Obviously, Patience doesn't know Fitz's history with dogs, but to him, he's like, oh my god, like this is such a beautiful thing that she's gifting me, and she has no idea the kind of light she's brought back into my life. And he literally says, like, the moment that Patience hands him the dog and he holds the puppy for the first time and he kind of quests towards the puppy to like read the puppy's minds and thoughts and feelings, he's like, I did not realize just how utterly alone I had felt until this moment. And Patience had no idea the sort of gravity she has gifted me in allowing me to have this bond. And his immediate thought isn't like relishing the joy of this moment, but he's like, I'm going to make sure that I hide this dog from Burge, because if he knows, he'll take the pup away from me. And I'm like, this poor child has to continuously think about the ways other people will react to him just having a little bit of joy in his life. And I'm like, what a miserable existence it is to be Fitz, knowing that he has to be on guard from certain people all the time. Ugh. But anyway, so Fitz then goes about learning the skill. He ends up meeting Galen, the skill master, and before he like reports for duty, he has to have like this last little conference with Chade, because Chade tells him like, once you start your training on the skill, you and I cannot meet until you are finished with your apprenticeship with this man. That's like the skill master's one thing that he makes his students do, that they just give up everything else in their life and devote all their time to learning the skill. And Chade is like, what do you know of Galen? And so we basically find out that Galen is just a very despicable man. Like, he clearly is misogynistic, not somebody who is for the people. He doesn't care to create relationship with anybody else. He is very self-centered. He only cares about manifesting skill into other people, and he doesn't care of the means. He is someone very abusive and unwilling to be in partnership with any other person. And Fitz is like, the only person he kind of seems okay with is Prince Regal. And so Chade's like, why do you think that is? And so Fitz is like, it's probably the reason why he gets along well with Regal is because he is aligned more so with the queen, and what the queen wants is for Regal to take over kingship of this duchies. Fitz ends up going to his first lessons, and this man is so abusive. Like, he tells them that they have to meet at this place. They can't wear any shoes, any clothes of warmth. Like, they can wear a basic like cotton shirt and pants, but they're training in an area that is very cold. And he's like, you need to detach yourself from any form of human pleasure, so they can't even eat anything worthwhile. And he is depriving them of these joys in life so that they can like focus and hone in their abilities. And he gets in trouble with Galen one time because he goes to the kitchen to get food for his puppy, but Galen mistakes it as like, oh, Fitz is out here sneaking about, because he thinks that he is better than everybody else because he is the bastard son of the prince. And he's like, this is not true, like, it wasn't for me. And Galen obviously doesn't believe him. And in that moment, it's kind of revealed to us the kind of growth in relationship between Fitz and the Fool, because the Fool catches wind of this and he tells Fitz, like, I'll take care of the dog for you so that you don't get any flack from the Skillmaster anymore. And he remembers and recalls that Chade told Fitz, like, the Fool seems to only be speaking to either the king or Fitz. And Chade is like, I think that you should keep him as a companion, as a friend, and heed his advice whenever he tells you, because like clearly he has a little bit more wherewithal in regards to what Fitz should be doing for himself, but also when it comes to the politics within the Six Duchies, the Fool seems to have a much better and wider grasp of that and to hold on to him as somebody who is a companion to him. So Fitz ends up trusting the Fool as he continues to go through this very honestly torturous lesson of like learning the skill. And at the last chapter that I'd read, we find out that Fitz truly is a very high level skill user, and that makes Galen very upset. Obviously, he's a very petty man. As I said, like he abuses his students and all those things. So it's not past him to be almost jealous of the fact that Fitz, who is a bastard, and he also has said so himself, he does not believe bastards should be taught the royal skill. Or when he's teaching Fitz how to kind of quest out himself and give other people like messages through the skill, he takes that opportunity to kind of control Fitz's mind in a way, because at this point Fitz has been very like guarded about himself because he also doesn't want Galen to find out about his doings with Jade, but also the fact that he is a wit user. And Galen is very much aware that he's been holding himself back. And so Galen kind of has this like mental tussle and struggle, and Fitz is able to overwhelm him because obviously he has so much more power. But within this struggle, Galen seems to be planting seeds of doubt into Fitz's mind, and he ends up telling Fitz, like, die. Like, you don't deserve to be here, kind of thing. And so that kind of compels Fitz to almost go and take his own life at one point. And he kind of turns the entire group of skill learners against Fitz. And Fitz is kind of like, I feel so alone, but not only that, like, I feel so unworthy of the ability to skill, which honestly, as a reader, feels not necessarily his own thoughts. And as he's sharing this with the Fool's like, I don't think this doesn't match up to the kind of conversations that we've had thus far. Like, you've been very insistent in learning this skill. What changed in you? And the Fool's like, I think I have an idea of what changed because that night after the like mental wrestling between Galen and Fitz, Birch and the Fool find Fitz on the area that they're learning the skill, beaten up very, very badly by Galen. And so Birch, being somebody who's tasked himself to take care of Fitz, drags Galen's ass all the way up to the witness stones. And in the Six Duchies, whenever you have a dispute and you put out your dispute in front of the witness stones, whatever comes to pass shall be. And so at the witness stones, Birch basically is like, you and I are gonna fist fight the same way that you fought this young child. And this is so that if I win, you have to teach Fitz the skill and you cannot back down on that despite your internal hate towards him. You have to do this and you have to teach him because he is of the royal blood and you cannot deny him the right in learning a skill that he has inherited. And Birch basically beats his ass, black and blue, very badly. And the people watching are like, we have not seen Birch be at this level in a long time since his injury that he had at the very beginning of the book. So it's very shocking to these people that Birch really had it in him. And so it really sends the message that, like, you know, fuck around with Fitz, you're gonna catch these hands kind of vibe. So that's where I ended off. This is like a 400-ish page novel, but like genuinely there is so much packed in there. I'm really enjoying the way Robin is bouncing between us being in the present moment, but also giving us these little bits of Fitz's thoughts retrospectively. I'm just seeing time and time again the absolute terrible treatment that Fitz is having from these older people in his life. And I think it's not even the fact that it's terrible in the way like Galen is just so outwardly cruel to him. Like, that is something that I understand, because like there's just certain people within the story that have morality that is very low to non-existent, and so it makes sense for them to be outwardly cruel. But we have people kind of like Chade, who is in one end somebody who cares for Fitz or is learning to care for Fitz, but in the end he is still teaching him the ways that maybe you wouldn't raise a young boy who was not a bastard. Like, if he was genuinely a prince, you would not be pushing him to the edge like this and kind of soiling who he is as a person. And then we also have somebody like Burrich, who's like, he does care for Fitz. He sees Fitz almost as a son and his responsibility because of his relationship with chivalry. But also, he is somebody who is very much denying Fitz his ability to be who he is, because like he very much is disgusted by the idea that Fitz has the wit. I don't know, just like rereading this and understanding that like these are the people in his life that he has to trust, and it's people he can't even fully trust because they are either hiding something of themselves from him, or they are denying him the ability to be who he is just so incredibly heartbreaking, really and truly. And you come to think of it, like, who does he really have in his life? And the only sort of levity that he has between these pages is his friend Nosebleed, who is Molly, who is this young girl in the town keep. She lives such a normal life, but like, despite him having a friendship with her and like potentially growing to like her in a more romantic lens, there's something that's holding him back because he can't be fully himself with Molly, because he's not told her like, oh, I'm the bastard son of Prince Chivalry. Like, he's been keeping his real identity pretty locked tight, and the only person he's really been able to be kind of like guards down with is the Fool. And even then he feels a little frustrated with his relationship with the Fool, because he like complains the Fool kind of speaks in riddles and he's not straightforward with the way that they've had discussions with each other. And so I'm just sitting here and wondering, like, what was Robin thinking when she was writing this book? Like, truly and wholly, to have this young boy really be treated as a tool and having such complicated and honestly very sad relationships with other people is very difficult to read, because he always bounces back to the idea that he has always been alone and he has always felt lonely, and the only place that he really feels solace with is with animals, because relationships with animals are so uncomplicated, and there's this kind of blind devotion that you have with animals once you create a relationship and a bond with them, and they don't really ask much of him. Whereas, like, every other relationship out of that, he's had to hide himself, or he is used as a tool, as a means to an end. And that is just such a sad thing to witness. I'm gonna continue reading. I think I'll end up finishing this book before I do my last check in, unless there is like a bigger plot point. From my memory, I don't know if something big happens besides like obviously like the last few chapters, but if I do see fit, I will check in probably at the 80% mark, but most likely once I'm done at the 100%, I will check in and then close out this vlog. Okay, so I have finished and completed Assassin's Apprentice. Honestly, from last where I left you, quite a few things have happened. I believe I left you off where Fitz is going back to taking skill lessons with Galen, and unfortunately there is this test for the rest of the students where they are going to be separated and they have to make their way back together as a group to Buckkeep Castle to be presented to the king during the spring festival. And obviously Galen doesn't want Fitz to succeed, so he drops him off at this town that Fitz eventually finds out is the town of Forge, where him and Chade originally had gone and witnessed the Forge people. In his struggle to get away from this town, and as he's being attacked by some Forge ones, he gets this kind of wit connection with his dog Smithy, and he witnesses somebody stabbing and attacking Burrich. And so instead of attempting to complete his mission for Galen, he casts that aside and he's doing his best to go back to Buckkeep Castle. And due to his injuries, he is quite slow. He's also not given a horse to get back in time, so he's kind of plodding his way along with his injuries, and he ends up showing up 2 days late, so obviously he has incompleted the mission that was given to him by Galen. But as he gets there, he's informed of Burrich's injuries, and he goes to see him in the infirmary, and Burrich kind of gives him the rundown of what happened, and Fitz admits to him that he knew that, and Burrich puts two and two together and he realizes that Fitz has been using the wit. And instead of having this sweet moment of Fitz being like, I came back to make sure you were okay, Burrich kind of flies off the handle and he gets very upset that Fitz is still using the wit. And he tells Fitz, I've really failed your father because I've not raised you to be a proper man. And I'm just very disgusted with you. And he ends up basically abandoning Fitz and pushing him away and telling him, you're not allowed to ever come back to my stables, and the relationship between you and I is over. We also learn that Smithy, in attempting to protect Burrich, has died as well, and so Fitz feels so at a loss at what to do because he's lost this very deep connection and bond with Smithy, and then he's also lost this connection with his almost father figure in Burrich, and also this thing that he's been training up to with the skill has been taken away from him since he failed that mission that he was supposed to complete. And the only person he thinks that he can fall back to is his friend Molly, but as he's attempting to go visit her, he finds that she is in the arms of another man, and so he falls into this very deep depression and he starts drinking himself drunk every night. And within the next chapter, Chade is telling him, you are very pitiful, you're being very spoiled, and no wonder why Burrich has casted you aside, blah, blah, blah. All of this being said without Chade knowing deeper about Fitz having the wit, and that being a major part of the discord between Fitz and Burrich. And so Chade is you need to get yourself together, so I'm tasking you to give Prince Verity his food every day. You can climb up to his tower, you can see to his needs, and that could be something that could put you back on track. And he ends up forming a deep loyalty to Prince Verity as he sees what he is doing for the Kingdom of the Six Duchies. Basically, Verity is skilling out to the Out Islanders who are raiding their country, and he's kind of muddling their minds in order to stop them and prevent them from raiding coastal lands. And unfortunately, doing that all by himself has really eaten away at his physical strength. And so Fitz is there to make sure he's eating, make sure he's taking proper care of himself. Verity kind of recognizes in Fitz that he actually has the skill, and he kind of quests in his mind, and he finds out that Galen actually kind of set a cloud over Fitz's mind and kind of locked away his skill ability so that he wouldn't be able to use it anymore. And so Verity unlocks that in him, and Fitz is this whole time I've been in this fog and not fully myself, and that was because of this man and his jealousy. And he's very upset by it, but Verity's like, I'm going to handle this because what he did wrong to you is a slight against the royal family kind of thing. There is a little bit of a complicated dynamic because Verity, I think, is the first person in the royal family to see Fitz in a human way, and he realizes that his father, King Shrewd, kind of sent Fitz to Verity as a means of like using Fitz's strength and like taking it from him in order to strengthen Verity, because within the skill ability you are able to like have connection with each other's minds, and one person can basically sap the life force out of somebody else in order to gain like more steady and equal power. And Verity's quite disgusted with that, and so he kind of casts Fitz away. Fitz is kind of like, not me being abandoned again by somebody that I kind of look up to and I appreciate and have a bond with. But Verity has very, almost in a sense, a selfless reason for doing that, because he really detests the way that his father, King Shrewd, is treating Fitz, and Fitz is privy to that as they're having a meal one day. He accuses his father of being okay with devouring one man in order to save a whole kingdom, and Fitz doesn't fully recognize that Verity is speaking about him specifically and how much he detests that his own father is treating Fitz as a tool and as a means to an end versus like somebody who is biologically his grandson. And King Shrewd kind of casts that aside, and he gives Fitz this mission to go to the Mountain Kingdom with the rest of this envoy, because Verity's younger brother, Prince Regal, is in the Mountain Kingdom, and he's setting up this political marriage between the princess of the Mountain Kingdom with his older brother, Prince Verity. And the task that is given to Fitz is that he needs to take out the prince of the Mountain Kingdom, which is the eldest brother to Princess Kettricken. And if they take him out, Princess Kettricken is the one that is going to assume the next line in throne and be the queen of the kingdom once her father dies of old age. And they're doing this in order to uplift the kind of political powers they have once Kettricken is married to Verity and they are able to kind of absorb the Mountain Kingdom into the Six Duchies. So once Fitz gets to the Mountain Kingdom, he is kind of pulled aside by Princess Kettricken and her older brother, Prince Rorix, and Fitz finds out that the prince had a friendship with his father and he feels some admiration towards this man. And he's like, oh God, this is going to make it hard for me to figure out how to kill him, right? Like, because he seems to be somebody who not only is someone admirable, but he is somebody who could be a very good political partner. But he is trying to like weigh the pros and cons of the mission that he's been given when Princess Kettricken's like, oh, let's take a walk and I'll show you around my herb garden. And they're just chatting about who Prince Verity is, because obviously she's not been given the opportunity to meet him, and Prince Verity is back at Buckkeep Castle because he is still doing this ongoing fight with the Out Islanders, and so Regal is in his stead to kind of pick up his wife and bring her back to Buckkeep Castle. And Fitz is like, oh, he's honestly a very good man. He's just so preoccupied with his loyalty to the kingdom and to the people of Buckkeep that he couldn't come away and he couldn't like see you in person. And she reveals to Fitz like, oh, Prince Regal has been saying all these sort of negative things about him, and I wasn't expecting your prince to be such a positive man because his younger brother was telling me all sorts of strange things. And then she also admits to him, like, if what he's saying about the prince isn't correct, then what he's been saying about you also isn't correct, because he told me that you are an assassin and you're here to kill my brother. And Fitz is like, yeah, no, I think no, I'm not here to do that. And he's like trying to hide the fact that he's so nervous, because this is the first time he's ever been put out on a mission with nobody he really trusts around him. And so he's like, oh God, like what is going on here? And he kind of feels nervous and a little dizzy, and he's not sure what's going on. And Prince Rorik sees them having this conversation privately, and he kind of breaks up the conversation, and Fitz is like, I'm gonna excuse myself, I'm gonna go. And as he's leaving, he feels like nauseous and sick. And when he gets back to his rooms, he realizes somebody poisoned him. And thankfully, before he left, the fool had given him this packet of herbs to help him like purge stuff from his body, and so that saves him. And the next morning, the prince of the Mountain Kingdom, Prince Rorik, he shows up and he's like, oh, thank God you didn't die. And he's like, I don't trust you because you probably poisoned me. And he's like, if I poisoned you, what would I be doing here asking you about if you're alive or not? And it's revealed to us that Kettricken tried to poison him, and she poisoned him with the herbs in the garden that she was like plucking and having him eat, that he stupidly ate. I don't understand why he did that, but Fitz isn't all there all the time, is he? And so the prince ends up telling Fitz, like, once your prince and my sister get married, these are the things that I am promising to you and the kingdom of the Six Duchies, and you should pass this message along to your king and have him recognize that me alive serves you so much more than me dead. And he's like, okay, like once I get back, I promise I'll do that. And he kind of vows to himself, like, I'm not going to be killing the prince anymore because I think and trust in his plan and his loyalty to be a good political partner. But Regal is like, no, we have to take him out. And I had told my father to bring Lady Time, who Regal doesn't know is actually Chade. But he's like, I told my father to bring Lady Time to take him out, and instead he sends you, and you are not capable of doing this, so you need to follow my orders, and you need to poison him and kill him tomorrow. And Fitz is like, don't you think politically the impact of that would be a little intense because that's even before the wedding? And Regal's like, what I say goes, and if you deny what I want, it's like you are denying the king, and that would be an act of treason. So Fitz has to go in to Rorik's room and poison his wine, but because he has this admiration for the Mountain Kingdom prince, he shows Prince Rorik, like, this is me poisoning your wine. You don't have to drink it, but just know that it's poisoned. The prince is like, oh, okay, like, I see what you're doing here. So instead of drinking the wine that he poured himself, he drinks Fitz wine. Unbeknownst to either of them, Regal poisoned the wine that they gifted to the prince. And so the prince starts convulsing on the floor. Kettricken comes in and is like, I told you that he was going to poison you and you didn't believe me, and I was trying to take him out and like look at what's happening. And Fitz is like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't know that this was going to happen. And so he's also drunk the poisoned wine, and so he's going through all this. And one of Regal's agents, who is working at the stables with Burrich, busts in. He's like, look, like, the bastard is a traitor and he's killed the mountain prince. And then there's a tussle, and then unfortunately that agent ends up dying. But Regal's whole plan of taking out the mountain prince and also framing Fitz as a traitor to the crown has come to place, and he's kind of dragging himself away to safety so that he won't be murdered. And the person who ends up finding him is Burrich, who was in the envoy to take care of the horses that they took up to the Mountain Kingdom. And Burrich is kind of like, should I help you or should I not? Like, who is your loyalty with? And he's like, just like you, I am a king's man, and I need you to help me because I recognize that Regal is here to take over and usurp the position of Prince Verity, and I need you to help me. So we kind of find out that Regal had planned for his man Galen back home in the Six Duchies to suck the life force out of Prince Verity during the ceremony, because one of the coterie members is skilling through Verity in order to be like eyewitness there for him. And they were going to suck out Verity's life force for him to die, and with the Prince of the Mountain Kingdom dead and his brother dead, Prince Regal would be the next in line to be king of the Six Duchies. He would also be the one to marry Ketcherkin, and he would also take over the ruling power of the Mountain Kingdom once the king there dies. And his plan is foiled, but not without Fitz taking a lot of damage. Like, he ends up almost drowning, and Burrich gets kind of bashed in the head, and they're in this very difficult position because, like, Burrich is laying there dying in this, like, bathhouse, and Regal is like, well, you're kind of poisoned and weak, so I'm gonna just leave you to flop about in the cleaning pool here, and I'm gonna go marry the princess of the Mountain Kingdom, and by the time all of the jovial celebrations are over, they're gonna find the both of you dead. And as Fitz is struggling in the water, he ends up being able to skill to Prince Verity, and he warns Verity of the treachery that is going to be Galen sucking out his life force. Verity, being given strength by Fitz through this skill connection that they have, ends up basically sucking the life force out of Galen and killing him, which I was like, oh, I didn't remember Galen dying that way, but that's how he dies. Verity, with the new energy that he has from basically killing Galen, he skills to the wedding ceremony, and he gives Prince Regal a warning that, like, I killed your half-brother Galen. It's revealed that Galen is the bastard brother of Prince Regal. His mother, the queen, had a child out of wedlock, so that is the bastard child, but he's dead now. So not R.I.P. Galen, because I did not like him at all. But, you know, Galen is dead, and Regal is very chastened by the fact that his older brother found out his plot, and they end up continuing the ceremony where Princess Ketcherkin is vowing her loyalty to the Six Duchies, and through the skill, Prince Verity is able to tell her, like, I wasn't in on the plot to kill your brother, but I promise you my loyalty and my honesty when you come here, and I hope that you and I can form a, like, respectable bond. And Ketcherkin agrees to that. And at the very end, we are told by Fitz that the person who saved him from his drowning wasn't a person at all. It was actually his dog Nosy, who we thought from the very beginning of the book Burrich killed, but in fact Burrich didn't kill Nosy, he just gave him to the Prince of the Mountain Kingdom, but Nosy was the one who dragged him out of the pool and basically saved his life. And unfortunately, Nosy dies from grief because of the bond that he has with the Mountain Prince. Fitz is now working through rehabilitating himself from the physical injuries that he sustained, and also these tremors and seizures he's gotten from the poison, and also the brain damage that was inflicted on him from obviously lack of oxygen when he was drowning. And that is how the first book ends. I hope my summary made some sense to you there. My final thoughts on this book is that it's very interesting on reread, seeing all the details that Robin Hobb has put into this book that obviously on first read I did not notice them as being as significant as they are later on, not only to the entirety of the realm of the Elderlings, but even in the first Farseer trilogy, there are so many little hints to things that we aren't fully privy to until obviously the story builds on. Like, a good example is that we find out at the end of this book as well that Burrich is actually witted as well. Fitz doesn't know that until the very end, because he's like, you only knew to save me because of you sense that Nosy was calling out to somebody to assist him. Burrich is like denying in a way. He's not witted in the same way that Fitz is. Like, he has the sense of it, but he denies himself using it the way Fitz does. And when I look back on the book, there are moments where animals interact with Burrich in a way that I'm like, Fitz, who has the wit, should have kind of noticed that. but because it's so natural to Fitz to have this bond with animals, he doesn't recognize Burrich's affinity and like understanding of animals as being witted. That just being a little example of the details that Robin Hobb puts in here. And I think she is just really a masterful writer in how she builds character, how she calls back to small details, even in moments of Fitz's younger life, how some small things that he didn't feel were that impactful are called back at the end of the last few chapters. Getting to reread this book and have such a fulfilling reread on this, I honestly was a little bit scared because I was like, oh, is my opinion of this series based off of nostalgia and the fact that I got to experience so much of this book with like new friendships I was developing, but like no, in actuality, in an unbiased way, like Robin Hobb clearly has a lot of good writing skill. I will say your enjoyment of the book is dependent on whether or not you enjoy the character work, and that's not me saying like you have to like who Fitz is. I know plenty of people who've read this book and don't like Fitz. Fortunately for me, I love Fitz, even though he is a big dummy and there are certain things that he does in here that I'm like, for somebody so well learned, you are very dumb. Getting to see how things in this book impact him in a way that is very understandable and makes a lot of sense, and there's a lot of logic to the way he basically chooses how to live his life. She sets up such a strong foundation for all of that to make sense. And also like the political machinations that go on in this book and how it further impacts the later parts of the story, and also the slight mystery that she builds with having the character the Fool almost gives Fitz these prophetic tellings, and how that unfolds in like the next events of Fitz's life is just so masterfully done. I enjoy the complexity of the story. I enjoy the way that we get to really know the characters that she has in here. I think it is such an interesting exploration of that very complicated human dynamic within relationships, and especially given his position as the royal bastard and how, just on a cultural sense, people treat you. How does that treatment of people reflect in how you interact with other people? Like, Fitz almost inadvertently acts towards people and puts himself at a lower standing than at an equal footing because of the way the culture has kind of shamed him to feel by being a bastard, despite that not being something that he is in control of. And in this book also, we see other bastards of people in the royal line and how they somehow are not pushed down by the cultural shame. And honestly, they have the gall and the audacity to use their bastardry to do more and almost like sinister things within the kingdom. Whereas Fitz, he's just so easily able to put himself down and not take and usurp the power that he has in his hands. And I think that exploration of character is just so interesting. And we definitely get to build on that character development in the next couple of books. On a technical level, it's a great time. On an emotional reading level, it was an iffy time because there are parts that are just so emotional, and knowing the wider story, some of the things that are put in this book that I know the later implications of were honestly a gut punch to me. There are so many things that I was like, Robin, I can't believe you went that far with these little nuggets that you've put into this book. Hope that this video made some sort of semblance of sense. I tried to go as much into detail of the summary as I possibly could, but if I really went into detail and talked about everything, I think this video would be like 5 hours long, so I didn't want to keep you here that long, but I hope you enjoyed my spoiler-filled video and basically the plot breakdown of Assassin's Apprentice. This is one of my favorite series, and if you made it this far, I hope that this encourages you to either start the series or continue on with the series. I don't know when I'm going to read Royal Assassin. I think I'm going to take a bit of a break from the story with Fitz because honestly that ending was very sad to me. And I just know that Royal Assassin is a much thicker, much more heavy book in comparison to this one. So I'm going to take a bit of a break before I get onto that second one. I'm not entirely sure if I want to film for the next one. If I do end up filming something, I don't know. Did you like the formatting that I did on this one? If you do like a detailed summary of the plot, like I did in this book, do let me know and I could potentially do another video for that one. But given that that book is almost 800 pages long, it will be a much longer video. So I would definitely like your feedback. But if you made it this far and you wanted to let me know, I definitely appreciate you being here because I know this video is a long one. Please put, I think the closest thing to a buck in the emojis is a deer. So please put a deer or a blue heart in the comments. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate you being here. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one. Bye!